hey, I just heard about the regional center. What is that? You could definitely give us a call. We could explain what the eligibility criteria is, what the application process looks like, what your appeal rights are. If you've applied and been denied, we can help you with the appeal process, which could include representing you at hearing, helping you find resources to represent yourself at hearing, understanding the process. Really just any of those options are possible. I should say we are a very small office. There's two of us. There's the client's rights advocate and the assistant client's rights advocate. I think there's about 24,000 or 25,000 regional center clients, so we can't represent everybody as much as we'd like to, but we try to give as much help as we can, just given whatever our resources are at the time we get the call.
Thank you. And I've just wanted to remind everyone that there is a chat box. All the chats will be open to everybody to see. So just warning you. I just put in Disability Rights' link and State Council's link. So both of those are in the chat box. If you look to the bottom of your screen, you just click on chat and you should see that window open. You can move that window around to get it out of your way. And if you have any questions or problems in terms of you know, just the process of the Zoom chat, feel free to put it in there and Kathy will try to help out. And then any questions that come up. I wanted to just encourage you to visit Disability Rights California's website. Lots of great resources in multiple languages, always written very well and very in a manner that I can understand. So really good information, especially the special education resource, which we call SIR, which is Special Education Resource, what is it, Rights and Responsibilities. And great resource. And so that's there along with a lot of other resources. So do visit their website and look for, Brittnee, is it called resources or?
If you go to the main page towards the top, you can select publications.
Publications, okay.
All the different areas, and then the special education is one of them. If you click on special education, then there's a number of publications about special ed, as well as the Special Education Rights and Responsibilities Manual, or SIR, like you mentioned.
Great. And as Brittnee said, it is a manual, so you might need a whole ream of paper. Probably the best use of paper is to print the entire thing out and start highlighting it and tabbing it if you have a special education child. That will be a great resource. So Brittnee, what about IPP meetings? If somebody wants to have you come to an IPP meeting, is that something that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. When I think I really pride how my office especially has I think a really positive relationship with the regional center. We try to collaborate as much as we can, I feel, to try to make sure clients' needs are met. So I'm very happy to attend IPP meetings. I find that often whatever the issue is, it can be addressed just through that kind of informal negotiation, just trying to have like just everyone come to the table and just discuss what the concerns are, what the client feels that they need, what the family feels they need, what the regional center's position is. And I find that a lot of the times we can kind of hash things out and get needs met in that area, through that process. Even before we get to an IPP, I have a really positive relationship with many service coordinators at the regional center. So if people call and say, hey, I'm having trouble getting a hold of my service coordinator, I don't know who they are, I don't know, they're not responsive to me for whatever reason, then a lot of the time we'll say, okay, who's your service coordinator? Let me call, like, let's have you sign a release, let me call, let me see if I can get a hold of that person, see what the problem is, and try to just have a really open conversation about whatever your needs are and how the regional center can support you.
What are some of the most common challenges or issues that you might get calls about from individuals who are clients of the regional center?
You mean specifically about regional center services?
Mm-hmm. Just, yeah, specifically on regional center services.
It really depends on, I think, the age group of the person. If they're adults, and when I say, actually I shouldn't say adults, if they're over 22 and no longer school aged, then usually it becomes about how they're able to live independently. And so that can have a lot of different forms. It might be about I'm trying to get around my community and having trouble doing that. I need personal attendant services, or I'm having trouble just living safely in my home, so I need support services in my home to help me. So that's probably the most common things, is just kind of supporting adults is what the most common issue is for adult clients. For children, for parents calling about their children who are regional center clients, it's probably respite and needing kind of that sort of support, someone to come in and manage and make sure their loved one, their child is being appropriately supervised so the parents can just take a much needed break.
Great. And we'll talk a little bit later about how things have changed with respite since COVID-19. What about IEP situations? Can you help with children under 22 and school issues?
Yeah, absolutely. School advocacy is actually my personal favorite. I love going to IEPs when I can. We get, I'm sure, the highest number of calls for assistance that we get is for school-related issues. We can definitely go to IEPs, but I tend to find that when someone's calling me, they're really not at the point of needing me to go to an IEP just yet. There needs to be more exploration that's kind of done for the whole team. So a lot of the time people say, can you come to my IEP? And I'll say, okay, well, when was the last assessment done? Oh, it's been a long time. Okay, we need to get an assessment to get a fresh understanding of the student's needs today before we can go asking for things. We need to just understand, what are we asking for? So asking for assessments, asking for an independent evaluation is sometimes necessary. Sometimes the parents want to maybe have an IEP, but there's a better way to go about addressing whatever that issue is. If it's filing a complaint because the IEP is not being followed, having an IEP meeting won't always necessarily fix that. There might be some other steps we want to take to make sure that need is being addressed. So I guess yes, we can go to IEPs, but I would say there's also a lot of other things we can do to try to make sure that the person's getting the help that they need and the child's getting the help that they need.
I know one area that we went to some meetings together on in Nevada County was about IHSS. Can you talk a little bit more about IHSS and some of the challenges you find in eligibility and protective supervision and just the whole review process? Because I know that's an area that can be really challenging and confusing.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to give a short explanation for those who might not be familiar, IHSS, or In-Home Supportive Services, is a program that's available in all counties of California. And the purpose of the program is to make sure that people with disabilities and people who are elderly are able to get the day-to-day care that they need to be able to live safely in their home. That can look a lot of different ways depending on the disability and the person's age and their needs, of course, but through the IHSS program, you can basically get hours for someone to come into your home and help you with bathing, grocery shopping, cleaning up your meals, helping you clean up after meals, toileting, getting out of bed, transportation to and from medical appointments, transportation to and from places you're getting other services like occupational therapy or behavior services. So IHSS is just really kind of broad in that sense, that just whatever your personal care needs for you to live safely at home, the county will pay someone to do that. They can pay someone who's outside of your home to come into your home, or it could be someone you're living with, like your parents, a roommate, a family member. It could be anyone who's over 18 and legally allowed to work in the US. Like, that's pretty much all you have to do. Pass a background check, that's all you have to do. So we definitely get a lot of calls about IHSS because it's such a vital resource to help people live safely at home. And for those, especially minors who have really extreme needs of care, then parents can't work, they can then make sure their child's taken care of, but still get that much needed income to keep the family afloat. So probably the most common issues we see for IHSS eligibility is for minors just being told on the phone, oh, well, you're a parent, you have to take care of your child, this is your job, you can't apply. Not true, not true at all. The IHSS program is available for anyone who has a disability or is elderly. So I've had clients as young as 2 get IHSS services. Yes, it's true that as the parent, you have to provide care to your child, make sure their basic, food and shelter and clothing needs are met. Yes, of course, that's a responsibility, but as we know, kids with special needs go above and beyond with their needs compared to children who don't have disabilities. Right. So that's a very frustrating thing for me to hear. I know it's very frustrating for families to hear, like, oh, well, just deal with it. Like, it's your kid. When that's really not what the law says. That's not the purpose of the program. So if anyone here is working with families who encounter that, or you yourself are encountering that, I would encourage you to still insist on the phone, like, no, I want to submit an application. If you deny me later, so be it. There's an appeal process, but I want to actually apply. That's definitely a big one for IHS eligibility. And then the other one I would say is the in-home assessment process is a really big hurdle, I'll say, for families. And I say that because, so the in-home assessment process, when you call the county, you apply, you say, I'm a person with a disability, or I'm calling about a person with a disability. We want to apply for services, see how many hours a month they can get. The county will then send someone to your home and they'll assess. They'll be like, okay, how much time does it take? Do you need help with toileting? Do you need help with bathing? Do you need help with grooming? What else do you need help with? What I tend to find with the in-home assessment process is that families really underreport what the person's needs are, because they're just used to it. They're just used to just going through the motions. They'll be like, oh, I don't know, I probably spend 6 minutes a day doing that, 7 minutes, and then that is not anywhere near true. That is several times shorter. And so then in the end, the county's like, okay, well, they don't seem to need a lot of help in these areas based on the parent report or the caregiver's report, and the person gets fewer hours that don't really represent the need, which is very difficult, because then the person either doesn't get the help they need, so their health and safety are at risk, or their needs just aren't accurately reflected, which can impact other services that you might try to get, where another entity might say, well, it seems like you don't really need that much help based on this county assessment, and that's really not true. So I think those are probably a couple of the biggest barriers that I see families hit at the in-home at the assessment process, and even just when trying to apply for services.
Since we're talking about IHSS, can you take a minute to talk about protective supervision? I think maybe the most confusion is around protective supervision and why one person might qualify for that and another person might not. And then also sometimes randomly, it seems counties will change someone's status or reduce their hours.
Sometimes. Yeah, so protective supervision is one of those sections in IHSS that you might qualify for. So there's like personal care services, which I mentioned, toileting, bathing, and then there's transportation, taking you to medical appointments, and there's also something called protective supervision. Protective supervision is services, basically supervision services for someone who needs extra close and intense supervision just to make sure they stay safe 24 hours a day. They need someone to be watching them to make sure that they're being safe. There's a lot of different criteria that when it comes to protective supervision. So I think the most brief way I can say it is it has to be someone who is has a mental impairment, who is likely to put themselves in danger, and they are non-self-directing, meaning they can't understand how something is dangerous, and so they need 24/7 supervision to stay safe. The example I tend to use is like someone with, like, say, Alzheimer's or dementia. They have that mental impairment. They don't understand the world around them. They don't really understand the nature of things. And so they'll do things like wander out of the house barefoot in snow, leave the fire, turn on the fire on the stove and leave it on. Just any kind of, just things that are just dangerous, where you just need to take extra care to make sure you're watching that person, that if they didn't have that condition, you wouldn't have to do that, but you have to go above and beyond what an average person that age would need because of their disability. And for, like, my clients tend to have autism, and so some common behaviors that I think qualify clients I work with for protective supervision would be eloping from the home, trying to get out of the home and just dart across the street, not knowing to look both ways for cars, not knowing what stranger danger is, not knowing not to climb up furniture and jump off furniture, trying to play with electrical outlets, putting non-food items in your mouth. Those are probably some of the more common behaviors I tend to see for clients I work with. And same for clients I work with who have intellectual disability, who really just don't understand that if something's broken, you have to be careful when you're picking up glass, or that you can't do certain things in the kitchen that could be dangerous, how to handle a knife, different things like that. And it can also get more complicated when we're talking about children again, because there is an expectation that you have to supervise children. And so when you are looking at whether or not a minor qualifies for protective supervision, the county has to compare this minor to a minor the same age who doesn't have a disability. So for my younger clients, that becomes very hard, because 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, those are kids you're going to have to keep a pretty close eye on whether they have a disability or not, compared to once we get to 13, 15, 16. At that age, you'd think you could leave a kid alone for a few hours who's 13 and they'll be fine. Or you could leave a 16-year-old for several hours and they'd be fine. But if the person, because their disability, can't be left alone, that makes a stronger argument to say, because of the severity of their disability, because of how impacted they are, they should qualify for protective supervision. And protective supervision is a very, it's the way you get those services. It's always 195 hours, period. It's not like it's, okay, 30 minutes here or 20 minutes here per week. No, it's a 195-hour package. So it's very significant to a family to be able to get protective supervision. And that is probably the most common service we see get denied, is protective supervision.
Yeah, thank you. Can you give a couple examples about individuals that you've worked with to help them access services that they were having a hard time accessing?
You mean just kind of in any area?
Yeah, any area.
Yes, I'm trying to think of just some areas I haven't talked about so far. We haven't really talked about regional center services exactly and trying to access those. So probably a common thing with the issue I see families having with the regional center is knowing what to ask for. They don't really know always what services I can get through the regional center, how to get it. And so probably pretty commonly we'll get people saying, I've heard about this service, or here's the issue I'm having. What do I do? Like what exists for me? And so usually we'll kind of try to offer kind of like almost hand-over-hand assistance in some of those cases to say, okay, ask your service coordinator for this specific thing and tell the family, go try that. And then the family comes back and says, I didn't get what I want. Say, okay, now ask for a notice of action. And the family will ask for that notice of action, a denial. And then we'll say, okay, now we're going to help you with the appeal process. We're going to file an appeal with you. We're going to help you go through the mediation process, go through the informal meeting process, even go before a judge with you, and then pursue whatever the services the family needs. So that does happen, I'd say fairly often, where we'll get families who are asking for those kind of specific services, and we're kind of working with them through the appeal process. Social Security, I don't know if this is exactly getting your question, but just so that everyone knows kind of what we do to help with Social Security, we get lots of families who get this really scary notice in the mail that says, you were overpaid, please write us a check for $20,000 to clear up this overpayment. And that is terrifying, because most people don't have tens of thousands of dollars just lying around to be given back to Social Security. So parents will often, and families will often call us in a panic saying, oh my gosh, I have all of this money that I apparently owe, like, do I have to pay this? I can't pay it, what's gonna happen? And so in those situations, usually to try to help them make sure, and also kind of paired with that, they'll say you were overpaid, and also we're not going to give you benefits moving forward. So not only do you have this $20,000 overpayment or $50,000 or whatever, you're also finding out next month you're not going to get your income. You're not going to get your cash benefits anymore. And so usually in those situations, we'll say, okay, send us the notice so we can find out what is the cause of this overpayment. Is it legitimate? Is it illegitimate? If it is legitimate, here's some advice we can give you about how to make sure this doesn't affect you in the future. And here we can help you with appealing this so you don't have to pay back the overpayment, and help you with filing an appeal so you can keep your services, your benefits going indefinitely into the future. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. What situations are you not able to help out with?
If it's an area, a legal issue that's not tied to a disability. So probably the most common ones will be family law issues, people calling about custody, even if they're regional center clients, like I lost custody, or I'm trying to fight to get, visitation with my kid. That's not an area tied to the person's disability, so we'll have to refer them to a family law attorney who can assist them. Also, evictions, we do help a little bit with housing, but it has to be tied to the disability. So if it's about, reasonable accommodations or reasonable modifications that are disability related, we can help with those things. But if it's just like, I haven't paid my rent in 2 months and now I'm getting told I'm about to get evicted, that's not an area we can help with because it's not disability related. So for that issue as well, we would refer out and say, here's a, legal services in Northern California, or here's some other resource that's ideally a low resource for people who are low income. or free resources for people in that sort of situation. So those are probably the two biggest. Family law issues and eviction issues are the ones we get that we really can't help with and just have to refer out.
Mm-hmm. Great. So let's pivot a little bit to today and COVID-19, and things are different now than they were 2 months ago. So what issues are you seeing, or have you seen issues come up in the last 2 months that are different from before, in light of also some new services that are available now that weren't available previously?
Yes, so the biggest issue we're seeing is, well, there's probably two issues that are pretty significant. The easier one to try to address is probably how people access social services programs. They might say, oh, I have this IHSS, I want to apply for IHSS. How is that going to work? I can't go into the office anymore. How are they receiving these applications? Do I have to sign a form? I don't have a printer, just trying to access just social services programs. So we are getting a lot of calls about that. People who were denied things right around the time that COVID-19 was really coming into full force and the shelter in place is coming into full force. They're like, how do I appeal now? I don't know how to do these things anymore. So we are kind of giving that information to people about how social services programs are still very much running. They're essential services, like they're still there, but we just have to go about them, getting them in a different way. The other major issue we're seeing is definitely about school. Parents are wanting their children to still, of course, get their occupational therapy services, speech therapy, specialized academic instruction, and now those things either are being offered in an extremely different way than they were up to this point, or they're not being offered at all. So we're doing a lot of checking in with the U.S. Department of Education website, see what guidance is being offered there, the California Department of Education office, just seeing what guidance is being offered there. We're kind of having to tell families a lot, like schools are allowed to be flexible right now. They can't do things like have kids come into the classroom in bulk anymore. So the way services are going to be provided, they're allowed to be different. They're allowed to not follow the IEP right now, which is not something I like to say as an attorney or an advocate. It's not something parents like to hear, which is understandable, but that's just the nature of how things are right now. We're also telling families, you do have the option to request makeup services. It might not make sense to ask for that now. It might be something you're asking for in the summer or early in the fall when school's back in session. But unfortunately, we just kind of have to be patient, let the school do as best they can, and just recognize we're just going to have to make do as best we can, and then try to make the children able to catch up to where they would have been as best we can later on in the year.
I see we have Jennifer Bloom and Gail Wilson, who are both with Alta. I'm not looking at my second page right now, so there might be somebody else from Alta as well. I know Helen is here as well. We had Jennifer was with our RAC meeting last week and gave a summary of how things are at the regional center these days, a little differently than usual in terms of services and the service coordinators. The office is being closed, but the service coordinator is still working and reaching out to all the families. Also, a lot of new services that are available or expanded services. Are you working with any of those issues? Are you getting calls that people don't know how to reach the service coordinator or how to access some of those additional services?
Yeah, I've gotten good reports from families about how now they're getting more hours automatically in daycare, personal attendant, and respite. So I know that's very much appreciated by lots of families. It does kind of pose an interesting question about how well families can access some of those services, because now you might not want an agency providing you a respite provider to come into your family home who you don't really know, and so that is still an issue that I don't know if there's really a perfect solution when the family is like, it's just me and my kid, I need someone else to come and do respite, but I'm scared to let someone in because just the state of the world right now. So that's still something that I think the regional center is trying to figure out how to make that still meaningful, to be able to authorize more services but have people be able to access them. I have gotten some calls from families saying they're having trouble reaching their service coordinator. So we're trying to do our part to let them know your service coordinator is still working, the regional center is still operating. You might get calls from an unknown number. You might get calls from a number you don't recognize. Try to check your voicemails if you can. If you can email, here's the secret to Alta's emails is the first initial last name at altaregional.org. You can try that. And then we're always very flexible. If the parent or family member tells us like, hey, we're trying to reach our service coordinator, I'll be like, who's your service coordinator? And then I can just email them and say, hey, this person's trying to reach you, please reach out. And usually I find service coordinators are very responsive to try to get a hold of the family. So I'm not getting a lot of calls about issues of families trying to reach service coordinators, which I think is good. It's definitely not, in my opinion, more than we were getting before COVID-19. So I think they're still able to have those interactions with families, and it's just kind of this learning curve as we're trying to figure out how are we still supposed to interact with each other when you can't just drop by Alta anymore. Yeah.
Right. We heard from Jennifer last week that I think it was over 500 IPPs have happened virtually since,
Wow.
yeah, so that's pretty amazing. Have you been involved in any of those IPPs through whatever platform they're using?
Not IPPs. I do have some clients who are in group homes, like kind of like specialized care group homes, and they'll have what they call like behavior team meetings. So I've used WebEx to call into those meetings a couple of times. It's been pretty accessible in my experience. I haven't tried to do a video, get involved via video, but with the WebEx program, in my experience, it's pretty accessible. It's fine, just calling in and just kind of just try to make do with what you can.
Great. Anything else you want to say before we open it up to everyone else to ask questions? I see we have a couple questions coming in, but just wanted to give you the floor for a couple more minutes that you want people to know about you or what you do or what you don't do.
I think we pretty much covered everything. I think just in short, if you're not sure if we can assist you, just call us. I'll put my information in the chat box in a moment, but just give us a call. Even if we can't help you with the Office of Clients' Rights Advocacy, we do have other programs in Disability Rights California where there might be another attorney or advocate who can assist you. And just to kind of describe what that looks like, we call it our Legal Advocacy Unit, which just broadly helps people with disabilities. They don't have to be regional center. They help people who can be regional center clients, but also people with mental health disabilities, with sensory disabilities like deaf, hard of hearing, visual impairments, other sensory disabilities. So there's a lot of different we call them practice groups of people who are focusing in on one specific area related to healthcare, related to issues that youth or children experience, related to public benefits, related to discrimination issues, related to civil rights issues. So even if you're not sure if I can be the one to help you, or maybe you're not from Alta's catchment area, you're calling in from somewhere else, we're statewide. So I would still say you're welcome to call or email me directly, and then I can direct you to someone else in my agency or our intake line to get support, try to get the support you need. And if at the end of the day, no one in our agency is really designed to help you with your unique issue, we do have lots of referral lists in lots of different areas, so we can at least try to direct you somewhere to get the support and help that you're looking for.
Thank you, Brittnee. And we've been working with you. I don't know how long how long have you been?
5 years in August.
5 years. I remember your first weeks on the job, and we had you come do a training. And but you've always been really, really responsive. If we email you because we got a call, within 24, 48 hours, you've always responded and been able to help the person, either refer them to the right agency who can help them, or said you would call them back, and so that's been great. And I know you have a good relationship with the regional center. Jennifer Bloom wanted everyone to know to please, if somebody can't reach their service coordinator, to try to reach them by phone or email. Definitely give them a day or two to respond. Everyone's trying to respond as fast as they can, and looking for those blocked phone numbers is a good idea to just be aware of. And if you can't reach your service coordinator or you don't know who it is, call the main number. You just have to give them your child's date of birth, and they can figure out who the current service coordinator is. And there are service coordinators who are stepping in to help out with cases that were currently uncovered. So don't let the fact that you don't know who your service coordinator is affect your reaching out and getting your questions answered. Right, Jennifer? Thank you. All right. And if you yeah, who was that?
That was Brittnee.
Brittnee, yeah. Go ahead.
Just actually, no, we have some people in the call I recognize who aren't a family member themselves, but support family members.
Right.
So I've called Alta a bunch of times, the main number, and as long as you have the first and last name and the date of birth of the person, you can find out who the service coordinator is. So just so if you're trying to help someone, it's very, very little you need just to find out that service coordinator's name, phone number, and email address, all that good stuff, then you can relay that back to the family and help them with making that connection.
Yeah, that's great. And if you ever can't get a hold of your service coordinator, you have an issue, just always ask for their supervisor and go up the chain. We've always found the supervisors are saying, please contact us if there's any problems. Like, we don't want you out there being frustrated, just contact us. If you're frustrated with the supervisor, go up to the next level. Jennifer Bloom, Michelle Johnson, one of the other folks who's, at the next level. So, don't sit at home being frustrated is usually my answer. Let's, figure out the right person to talk to. I want to look here and see, I have a question. When parent requests to Regional Center personal assistance services and the service coordinator refer the parent to IHSS services. So Brittnee, maybe if you understand that, otherwise maybe Jennifer can answer that.
Yeah, I can speak to that, and of course, Jennifer or anyone else from Regional Center who wants to add in is of course fine. So the Regional Center, they have to follow this law called the Lanterman Act. All of their services and the way they provide services, they're having to follow this law, which requires that families access what's called generic resources. A generic resource is basically a program or resource that's available just to the general public, whether you have a disability or not, whether you're a Regional Center client or not, you're able to get this resource. So schools are considered a generic resource, private insurance is considered a generic resource, Medi-Cal, Social Security, in-home supportive services or IHSS. Those are things that just kind of members of the general public are able to go and pursue. So the Regional Center does have to say, go pursue this resource first. And then once those resources have been exhausted, you've gotten denied or you've gotten the max amount of help you can, and there's still a gap, that's when you can go to Alta and say, okay, my needs aren't still not being met, but I went to this generic resource first. I got assessed, I got these, whatever authorized or whatever was denied. Now can you help me? And then that allows Alta, who's considered the payer of last resort, to step in and say, okay, now that you've tried getting generic resources, we're able to help make sure your needs are being addressed. Right. And so just specifically for that one, personal attendant hours, for those who are on the call who might not be familiar, personal attendant is basically where someone can come in and help you just do whatever you need to do that your disability makes it so you can't. So it could be making sure you're staying safe because you're not able to, making sure you're able to navigate your community safely, make a grocery list, cooking. It's very, very similar to IHSS. So if you're finding I need help with toileting, with cooking, with getting myself to medical appointments, all those sorts of things that I mentioned earlier with IHSS, you do have to apply for IHSS first, get whatever hours you can, and then once you have that, if there's still that gap, that's when Alta can step in and assess to see if you qualify for personal attendant services or some other type of service.
Did you want to add anything, Jennifer?
I just sent Brittnee a little chat privately, and I said, perfectly stated, thank you.
Great. Okay, good. It's good to have the validation right here.
Yes.
Good.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't see another question. So if you have a question, we're just gonna, see how many people can speak at once. Take yourself off mute and go ahead and ask a question. Whoever starts first will get to ask the question. So you just have to unmute yourself and start talking, and then your box should light up.
Charity has a question.
Okay.
So you mentioned with the IEP meetings. So do you help children with dyslexia?
Yeah, so good question. We definitely do have clients who have dyslexia or other learning disabilities. As long as the issue you're calling us about is disability related, we can help. And if you are a Regional Center client, I could be the specific one to be able to help you, even if the issue is about dyslexia or some other type of learning disability.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I'd like to add that we help people of all different backgrounds and cultures, languages. So if you need to communicate with me, but maybe it's not best for you to talk to me in English on the phone, there's some other way that's better for you to communicate. We're very open to supporting you in whatever way makes the support meaningful to you. So if that means we're meeting in person, if that means we have an interpreter, if that means you have people you bring to the meeting with me to help you communicate with me, if we're using assistive technology, whatever the case is, that's always more than fine. We have families who call us who speak Punjabi, who speak Dari, who speak Farsi, Spanish, Russian, so many different languages. And also we have clients who themselves have a disability who are calling us, and we recognize that we need to take extra care to make sure we're speaking in a way that's meaningful and accessible to them. We have clients who are blind, clients who are deaf, clients who have developmental disabilities, but also a coexisting mental health disability. It's very helpful to us when you share these things with us, if you're comfortable with that, so that we can make sure that we're able to communicate with you in a way that's effective.
Anyone else have a question? Feel free to unmute. SB, do you have any questions? I'm going to start calling people out here. No. Looking on page 2. Anyone else have a question for Brittnee? I think there's areas that we haven't even touched on that you sometimes do advocacy around, and some of those I'm thinking of are transportation, day or work services, employment services, transitioning period in life from school age services to adult services, and then like you mentioned, through the death process, elderly people moving from one facility to another if their needs change, or from one program to another as they age. Did you want to add anything on some of those areas?
Sure. I think that there's just a lot of things that are just become unknown because you haven't experienced them yet. And I encourage people to give us a call when you're just like, hey, I think something's about to change. My kid's about to graduate, or they're about to age out of school, or what exists for us? What happens next? That's definitely a big source of anxiety for lots of families. And the ones that you just mentioned are definitely big ones that people call us about. Transition age, from early start to Lanchman services. So for those who don't know, that means Alta provides services in a different way for kids who are 0 to 3 than they do for kids who are 3 and up, or people who are 3 and up. So that's a big source of anxiety. How's my child gonna get services? Now I'm going into the school system. What is an IEP? Is my child gonna be eligible? So we do like to have those conversations with families, just let them know, like, hey, this is how things are gonna change. You're not gonna have someone from an Alta paid provider come to your home and sit on the floor with your toddler anymore. That's not gonna happen. You're gonna go to the IEP, you're gonna go to preschool, and this is what the services are gonna look like. It's not gonna be the way that you've known it. And the same for that transition from 18, if you're getting a diploma, or 22, basically when you're exiting from school, knowing I want to get a job. What can I do to do that? So we connect people with Department of Rehabilitation to say DOR, Department of Rehabilitation. That's a program that can help you with getting employment, finding a job, keeping a job, developing skills so that you can engage in competitive employment. Here's how regional center services are going to change now that you're done with that transition period in school. 22, once you're done with that, the way Alta interacts with you is now going to be different. Another one, just speaking of kids who are turning 18, the question of conservatorship. What's going to happen now that I can't talk to the doctor about my kid's needs anymore? I can't talk to the school the same way anymore. Alta's telling me my kid now has to participate in IPPs. What's up with that? It's a lot of concern, a lot of anxiety and stress that goes into that situation as well. So we like to talk to families about the alternatives to conservatorship, what realistically to expect when your child turns 18, We hear a lot of misinformation out there, sometimes from schools that say you have to conserve your child when they turn 18. You have to conserve them now. And families feel like if I don't do that, my child's going to be taken away from me. I'm not going to be able to talk to anybody in their circle of support anymore. And that's just not true. So we do a lot of that discussion with families about what the person's disability is, what are the concerns they have with them turning 18, and just some of the alternatives so they can still be supportive of their now young adult, while still empowering the young adult to be able to make those decisions for themselves that are hopefully going to be, good and healthy decisions that are supported decisions, but still their own decisions. And then, as you mentioned, kind of later on in life, when people are much elderly, I think my oldest client was like 95, I think, 89, and then I think 95 was actually the more recent older client. So, as people age and then their parents are no longer able to take care of them, and then the responsibility is shifting to maybe more the regional center, making sure their basic needs are being met, that their housing is appropriate, that their support staff is meeting their needs, all that good stuff. That's something that we often talk with the person with the disability or maybe their support staff to say, okay, here's what your needs are. Maybe you don't have that family support system anymore, but you do have these other support systems. How are we going to access those, enhance those, so that you're still having a very productive and good life as much as possible?
One of the issues that's come up recently is all of the emergency preparedness planning we've been doing with folks over the years, and all of a sudden people are really having emergencies and needing, maybe to be hospitalized, and finding out that all of the information that we've shared is really important, but no one really sat down, or very few people, and actually filled out the forms and got ready. So it's something that I just want to put out there to remind people, the one-page information sheets, and there's been a number of really good trainings on Zoom. Autism Society of LA has done several, and other groups of just encouraging people to really sit down and fill out those emergency forms so that you have everything written down on a piece of paper. What the unique issues are for you or your family member, communication and medications and health issues and behavioral issues, and medical history, just what your favorite things are if you're not able to communicate, your foods and colors and music if you're in the hospital and you like to have a certain kind of music, but you're separated from your family. So there are just a lot of issues, but having that information written down so that you are ready. And that goes for all of us. Every one of us should have that information written down for our own Go kits, right? Raise your hand if you actually have a Go kit ready to go. Raise your hand.
Oh no, don't shame that, Sonia.
Go SB. Go SB. Now we're rewarding the people who just raised their hands. Everyone else is just being shy. But actually having, being ready. Thank you, Virginia. Yes, Virginia even has her mask on in her office. Virginia with Cal OES. Thank you, Virginia. Anyway, that's really important. Virginia, we're going to keep doing trainings, right? We're going to keep sharing information, encouraging people to be ready for anything that happens, because what's coming up next?
It potentially, it's not if, it's when it comes up next. It will be a big one, whether it's an earthquake or a wildfire. We are entering wildfire season here, and it's very important to get those health forms filled out, because it's not if, it's when it's going to happen. So thank you for doing that plug, Sonia. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Virginia. Okay, well, one last call for any questions.
Another question I'm seeing in the chat.
Do you see one? Okay. Is DRC support and guide families about self-determination? Oh, just want to talk about self-determination a little bit?
Yes, yes.
And then one other person after that is being shy, but they have a question.
Okay. We are definitely aware and supportive of people who are trying to get involved in the self-determination program. For those who don't know, self-determination is a new model for providing services to people who are regional center clients. Right now, the system is that the regional center has what we call vendored services, where essentially the regional center is contracting with these agencies that provide services directly to people, to their clients. And now people can say, I want to do this new model where I can pick my own people who are going to provide services to me. I'm not going to be limited to those agencies that the regional center contracts with. I'm going to pick my own pick my own services. I'll still have my team that's supporting me and making decisions and helping me meet my goals. That's like my really, really, really short description of the self-determination program. It's a lot more complicated than that, but we are definitely getting calls out, people who are interested in the program, who want to know what their rights are in the program, the difference between self-determination and the traditional model of services. I personally am on the Self-Determination Advisory Committee at the Regional Center. I think our next meeting is
May 13th.
Okay, the Wednesday following.
Yeah.
May 13th, we're open to the public. I don't know if Sony, who you could speak, if you could speak to this, or Jennifer, but who, if someone wants to get involved and get the call-in information to those meetings, who they should contact.
Let's see, why don't we have them contact Brittnee Mangum? She's our executive assistant, and I can send her email to everyone right now. If you wanted to be invited to the web, we're having it via WebEx, which is similar to Zoom, but it's the platform that the Regional Center is using for this meeting. So I will send her email address, and then she can forward the invitation on to people who are interested to either be present via phone, like some are today, or video.
Thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, so that
Certainly.
meeting is May 13th. I'm looking to the left because that's where my calendar is. It's from 10 to 12. That is not a training. It is a working group. And so we're looking at, how are things rolling out? What trainings are coming up? What are the issues? What are the success stories? If several families have switched over into using self-determination already. So we'll be hearing from them and how things are going. So it is a working group. Don't show up and expect to have kind of a ABCs of self-determination, because it's usually not what the meeting is about. But everybody there is more than happy to share and share information and so on. But it's also great to see the process in that everything's still, not everything, but a lot of things are still being worked out. So join that meeting if you can, and you can do it from the comfort of your home now. Yeah, and then Kylie, you don't have to turn your video on. I think you can just unmute and ask your question. Kylie LeBlanc, I think you had she typed it. How should DSPs approach a potential workplace discrimination issue? I have a participant on my caseload who is looking for career advancement in his workplace, but is overlooked because management is, quote, concerned that he will hurt himself in a different department, end quote.
That sounds like a good one to definitely reach out to us so we can find out more details about that situation. Yeah, discrimination, unfortunately, is something that we encounter, and discrimination isn't always, no people with disabilities allowed. Like sometimes it is more pervasive, kind of like that is like, well, we're just, concerned about you. Let's just leave you right here, which I would say is discrimination. You're treating someone differently based on their having a disability. So I would say reach out to us directly so we can talk more with you or this person with the disability in detail and see how we might be able to assist you further.
Okay, I have a question.
Who's it? Kadada, go ahead.
Yes, it's Kadada. So just to kind of piggyback off of what you just said, oftentimes agencies or people find a clever way to discriminate against people with disabilities. And sometimes it just takes a basic letter, not a basic letter, but a letter, to write a letter to pretty much put them on notice that that this is what's going on and it's unfair treatment. And in an effort to not inundate your office with everyone, because it happens a lot. And I can tell you from personal experience, for example, a parent who doesn't get respite often decided to take her daughter to a place called Kids Park. This is pre-COVID-19. And Kids Park is sort of like an indoor playground. But because her daughter had on the medic alert bracelet, they decided to put notes in the system. Well, she said that there were no issues, but apparently one of the staff members had an issue just saying that her daughter gets overstimulated by crowds, which is not something that her daughter suffers from, because we know that kiddos on the spectrum, they have different, deficits. That's not something that happens with her daughter. She actually welcomes a lot of kids and, large crowds. But this person put the notes in the system saying that the child was overwhelmed and overstimulated, and pretty much said that she told the parent not to bring back the child when it's busy. Now, the problem with that is that when she tries to go to another location, well, they never told her that. She said they never said anything like that. And then she tried to take her kiddo to another location so that she can get respite. And the notes popped up and they were reluctant to take the child. So she wanted to write a letter. I'm not a lawyer, so I wanted to kind of steer her in the right direction and put them on notice that this is not a condition of my child's disability. And you should remove that from the notes so that she won't have difficulty in the future going to another location.
Yeah.
So how would I think that that's like a minor, issue for your office maybe? And is there a resource? This is my question. Is there a resource, or is there a place where she can go to get that guidance and that help to formulate that letter?
Yeah, I mean, I don't consider that. I think thank you for bringing that up. I don't think that's a minor issue. I think that's very significant and happens, like you said, all the time in many different forms. Like, don't bring your kid to prom, it's going to be too much, or no, you need to come be the one to take them on the field trip, or they can't come. And it just happens in all different types of formats. Like you said, kind of sneaky. So
Yeah.
depending on who the agency is, I love your idea. Like, Jess, definitely do a letter, like just showing, I know what my rights are. I think that speaks volumes. I would still say give us a call, because sometimes you can write a letter, or I can write the same letter but put it on my fancy BRC attorney letterhead, which I'm
yeah.
Yes,
Sorry.
asserting that you know what your rights are. Today, I'm asking for this as a reasonable accommodation, a reasonable modification. Following up and doing things in writing is great, and then sometimes filing a complaint with the appropriate agency to get more eyes on it. If it's the Department of Fair Employment and Housing, if it's the Department of Education, Department of Social Services, just depends on who it is. But you can also file civil rights complaints if it comes to that.
Thank you, Brittnee. Kadada, I'm going to point out Brittnee's email and phone number in the right-hand side in the chat box, so everyone can see that. And we will be emailing everyone out a survey from Brittnee and ourselves after this meeting, probably this afternoon. So we'd love to have your feedback. And I thank you all for joining us. I need to end because our next training starts in 1 minute. But thank you all, and we hope you can join us next week with Vance Taylor and to talk about emergency services and planning in the state. So thank you again, and have a great day. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye. Thank you, Jonathan.
Sure.